liberty and justice for all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Monday, February 3rd Town Council meeting. We have no announcements tonight, but I will also let everybody know, I'm sure you're all well aware, we have some snow coming in, and as you're probably well aware, our Public Works folks have done an outstanding job this winter so far, and I know they will do another outstanding job. I want to certainly take an opportunity to recognize Eric and his team for the many, many hours of hard work and a great job they've done clearing snow and getting our roads passable in our community. So Eric, outstanding job, and thank you.
I think, John, I had heard that they had worked, I think it was 17 or 18 days straight during one period, so quite above and beyond duty.
So moving on, we do have a presentation this evening.
Right. Good evening, Town Council. My name is Tony Elliott with the Parks and Recreation Department. It is my pleasure this evening to present the Town Council with the Indiana Parks and Recreation Association Award of Excellence for the Nickel Plate District Amphitheater. Fishers was selected as the award recipient for facility development. This award is presented for excellence in the development of recreation buildings and complexes that transform facilities into sources of community pride. I'd like to say a big thank you to Fishers Town Council, to Scott Fadness for your support on developing the amphitheater and the vision to create the amphitheater. I'd also like to thank the Hamilton County Convention and Visitors Bureau for their support for this facility. The amphitheater has truly become a destination point in downtown Fishers and a hub for entertainment, cultural events, and community. In 2013, the amphitheater hosted more than 60 events, drawing over 60,000 people, and we're currently working on a very exciting lineup of concerts, festivals, and events for 2014. So once again, thank you to the council, thank you to Scott Fadness for your support. And on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, I'd like to present the Indiana Parks and Rec Association Award of Excellence for Facility Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I'd be remiss if I wouldn't say a few words about, especially one of our counselors. Kind of one of the. This was certainly his idea, and we embraced it as a council. And as David George here to my left, it was his idea to have this amphitheater, and we all embraced that. And certainly want to thank you, David, for your vision and you know how many we have. What 50,000 people?
60.
Yeah. I mean, pretty incredible for our first summer. It was a big success. So, congratulations, and also thank you, Tony, and your team for everything you've done as well. Moving on to the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, which is the previous meeting memorandum for January 21st exec session and January 21st work and regular session, and item B, request to approve amendment for professional service contract for intersection improvement at 106th Street in Cumberland.
Second.
A motion by Mike, a second by Pete. I will be abstaining from the meeting memorandum, executive session and work session. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We're going to change up the agenda this evening. We're going to move item 18 to the top of the agenda, which is a request to approve appointments to town boards and commissions. There's a reason for this, because we need to have this individual voting tonight on some things we're going to be doing.
Yes, I would ask that the council take under consideration Josh Russell as an appointment to the Economic Development Commission.
So moved.
Motion by Stewart, second by Pete. All's in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Another item change we're going to have on our agenda is move on to item 15. which is request to approve a resolution authorizing the execution of the project agreement for the downtown mixed-use development project between the Town of Fishers and Fishers Urban Development, LLC.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Tom Dickey. I'm the Director of Community Development. And the mic is on. Maybe I'll just get a little closer to it. We're excited to be here tonight to talk to you. This has been a project that's been ruminating for a while. As you recall, we talked in the fall of 2012 about an opportunity to purchase the then vacant KFC building after KFC had closed it and opened a new store on State Road 37. We talked about the opportunity to sort of forever get a drive-through and fast food off of 116th Street and out of downtown, which was an important concept. We also talked about just controlling that piece of property and really using it to spur redevelopment in downtown. And since that time, we've been working on this project, and we're excited to talk about it here this evening. So the way it's going to work is I'm going to work through a presentation to you, and then we're going to ask the developer, Jaeger Properties, to do the same. But before we do that, we need to actually open up our other meetings to the boards that are here tonight. And I noticed that, Rich, we don't yet have a quorum of the Town Hall Building Corporation, so we'll play that by ear. And if we don't end up with a quorum, then we'll unfortunately have to ask for your services to come back maybe next week and have another meeting with the rest of the members. But we do have now a quorum with Josh's attendance on the EDC to open the EDC, and we have the majority of the members of the RDC here. So if we maybe, Paul, if you want to open up the RDC meeting, that would be great.
Okay. This meeting is called to order. We are going to consider FRC 07-0203-2014, approving the project agreement related to KFC.
Okay, the meeting is open. Good. Okay, thank you. And the EDC? Brian?
Acting President, I'll call to order our meeting to consider approval of resolution EDC 02R0203-2004, Economic Development Commission approving project agreement for Jaeger KFC.
Great, thank you. And Rich, we'll just sit tight, and if Julie, I know Darren for sure can't be here. If Julie does make it, then we'll just stop the presentation and then ask you to open the meeting at that time. Okay, great. All right, let's get moving. So this PowerPoint that I will go through hopefully will take 15, 20 minutes, but by all means, stop me if you have questions. We can be here as long as you would like to make sure we get all the facts out and get all your questions answered. We're going to start with just a couple of pictures. So I think you all know this is on the northeast corner of 116th and Lantern Road. To the right is the KFC property that the town purchased in early 2013. And then just across the street, you're now sitting as a photographer looking to the north at the Jaeger building and the parking lot that will be a key part of this project as I describe it to you here. Before I really get into the project, I just want to talk for a second about downtown redevelopment and our strategy. And this is something we've talked about before, but I think it always bears at these important sort of key times that we go back and look at it. You know, this downtown strategy has really always been about people doing different things downtown, people living in downtown. So that's why if we're looking at the Flaherty and Collins project, we'd check off, yeah, that project meets that goal. We need people living down here for evening activity, and just more people in the area for supporting the local businesses. But equally, we need people working in downtown so that we don't want everybody leaving their residences and then driving somewhere else to work. We need people working in downtown to buy lunch in downtown, to do shopping during the day in downtown, really to support those businesses during the day, because we know those retail businesses can't be sustainable just on one meal a day. So if they're real successful at the evening meal, that's great, but we really need a second meal so that working, the people working in downtown is critically important. People coming downtown for events, it's fortuitous I'm following the award that the town just got for the amphitheater project, because that really is meeting that desire and part of our strategic plan, as well as other programming downtown, including the pocket park, the mural, and those types of things. We want people eating and shopping. We want that day where somebody can just come downtown, park somewhere in Fishers, and then make a decision after they get here whether they want to eat or shop or what they're actually going to do. Public spaces, I've mentioned the amphitheater, the green space behind us, or behind you, and then behind me, the central green in between the Flaherty project and the train station will be improved this year. The pocket park that I've already mentioned, those types of spaces They can have programming in them, but they can also be very simple, where a family might just decide to walk and sit for the afternoon. So those spaces are very important for our strategic plan. And then finally, we need people walking. That means we need people parking their cars and getting out and walking, or walking from their residence to downtown. And so I mentioned cars there, so I wanted to hit on a part of the strategy tonight about traffic and traffic improvements, because obviously we know 116th Street is very important to this community, and it's both from a transportation perspective, but it's equally important because it's right in the middle of our downtown. So the traffic improvements that we've been looking at and planning, as you know, are a pretty long laundry list here. And if you look at all of these, we've looked at them independently, but this is the first time that I've actually announced that here's the entire list of these various pieces we've been talking about. And it's pretty impressive how all these are designed in one way or another to sort of help with the issue of traffic on 116th Street. The 106th Street interchange, which is under design today and should be under construction by NDOT in 2015. The 116th Street real-time signal system that you all have been very instrumental in making happen, and I know that will be implemented this year, give us a lot more control over our signals and the timing of those. And as I know you know, this is not just on 116th Street, but other major corridors in the town as well. A major improvement to Lantern and Commercial intersection, which I'll show you later, which I know you know what it looks like, but I'll make sure everybody else knows what it looks like. Today we had that issue where those roads come together, and then you try to get across the railroad tracks, and people are exiting the business park there, and I think that this improvement will make that much better. Adding flashers at that same railroad crossing I was just describing on Lantern Road will make traffic flow much better there. 106th Street and Cross Point roundabout will be an improvement made this year ahead of the interchange and really help traffic flow there, and also will be much more important as that interchange gets built, and that really becomes another route in and out of our downtown. Fishers Corner Boulevard extension, which we recently signed agreements to purchase the properties needed for that, which will allow east-west connectivity off of 116th Street in downtown, crossing the tracks, which that opportunity is not there today except for Municipal Drive here behind us. So that really be a key component of taking some traffic off of 116th Street for those local trips. Maple Street improvements will be made, again, getting people off of 116th Street efficiently, and there'll be parking added there to make that a better walkable area for those businesses in that area. I-69 improvements, of course, we're not driving those or paying for those directly. Of course, all of our tax dollars find their way there one way or the other. But those already have made a big difference with the northbound improvements last year, and then the southbound improvements to happen this year with the added addition of a new lane all the way from 116th Street down to 82nd Street, where you can just when you get onto 116th Street now going south, you'll no longer have to merge. You can literally stay in the right lane and decide to merge whenever you want to, or you can stay in all the way to 82nd Street if you're getting off there going west on 465. South Street extension is another concept that's not designed yet, but it's in the long-term plan, which is, again, connecting South Street where it crosses the railroad tracks, again, to allow east-west connectivity, where today we're forcing all those cars out to 116th Street to go east and west across the railroad tracks. Another improvement that's not slated this year but planned for 2015 are improvements to Lantern Road to add parking and then just to add a better flow of traffic through there. And that's something that I'm sure if you travel this area each morning that needs to be addressed is the 116th Street and USA Parkway, and those improvements are something that we actually met with the developer on just recently to begin to brainstorm on how that area can be improved. And so this likewise, just like getting people downtown, this is a key component of our downtown strategy. And so I want to just put on this slide here kind of what we've done over the last 18 months with respect to downtown redevelopment. We started with this idea, which we celebrated tonight. The Nickel Plate Amphitheater and Trail was opened in 2013, really making more formal that informal gathering of people on Tuesday nights for concerts, but then adding the Saturday night country music series and then just other events back there as well, including the Ice Fest, the Doggy, the Wolf Stock, and other things that have been wildly successful. And then last year, with identifying this piece of property and bringing online this project, the Depot project, with 241 units, some retail, shopping, and restaurants there, a garage, and that's about a $42 million project that will open later this year and then reopen in early 2015. About the same time when that broke ground, you all were instrumental in kicking off Launch Fishers, which really has changed sort of the way that people think about downtown Fishers, that opening in October of 2013, and just bringing that focus on growing small businesses to downtown Fishers. Then in just a few weeks ago, you all looked at the Meyer & Agent project, and we attracted Meyer & Agent to build their new headquarters in downtown Fishers. which should be breaking ground in the next 60 to 75 days. It's a $7 million project, a 40,000 square foot office building. Again, we'll bring, thinking back to that strategy piece, we'll bring those daytime workers down here to support local businesses. That project opening later this year. And what we're here to talk about tonight is the project site. This is the site of the KFC, which is the box to the bottom there, and to the north is Jaeger Properties' existing building, which will be very much integral to this project we talk about tonight. So what's there today? There's a vacant KFC building. It closed in late 2012. Town purchased the property in April of 2013. It's about 3/4 of an acre. It's about a 3,500, give or take, square foot fast food building. It assessed in March of last year for a little over $1.2 million, and the taxes paid in 2013 were about $27,000. The parking lot piece of the Jaeger property is about 3/4, about 0.7 acres, give or take, and then also subject to final design. There's a little over 80 spots there. I had to estimate, sort of breaking up the way that whole property was assessed, but I'm estimating that on the parking lot it is assessed for about $205,000, and taxes related to just the parking lot may have been in the $5,000 range there, about $4,500. So the project we're going to talk about is one project. It has a couple different components that I think you'll get a real good feel for when we're done talking about here. But there's the 116th Street building. What I'm talking about is the building's right on 116th Street. It's a 3-story building, 51,045 square feet. Would have medical and retail uses and maybe some general office uses in there. Jaeger has been negotiating, as within, I think, probably a few days of finalizing its lease with the Community Health Network to take all the third floor and part of the second floor, and we're excited about that. Again, bringing that daytime population, jobs, and good-paying jobs to this area. The Lantern building, which is a building that would be on the west side of the garage, wrapping the garage so that you wouldn't see the garage from Lantern Road, would be about a little over 9,000 square foot building that could be retail on the first floor and then office on the second and third floor. And then the garage would be a 330 space public-private parking garage. Important there because it can be available for public parking every evening after the business hours, and then on every weekend event and holiday event. So those type of things. This garage will be instrumental in a lot of our downtown events now, and also with the new road, which we'll talk about in just a second, which I know you've seen before. You're just a block and a half away from the amphitheater and other activities, so that'll be a really important component as well. This is the site, so to orient you, to your right is 116th Street, to the left is North. This is the new intersection of Commercial and Lantern Road that I talked about. This is a new entrance into that business park. The existing entrance up there will be closed, and a stoplight will be added here, so this will be a lot better flowing traffic through this area. This is the site plan. Again, this is the same orientation. This is 116th Street to your right. This is the existing Jaeger building. This is where the parking garage would sit on the site and be immediately adjacent to the building, but not attached to the Jaeger building. The 116th Street building would sit here and be integral and attached to the parking garage. Then that wrap building, the Lantern Road building, would be here to the west, again, so that you're driving down Lantern Road, you see the streetscape and activity on the first floor, not the garage. So I want to switch now and dive into the public-private partnership part of this and just how the agreement works between Jaeger Properties and the town. It's approximately an $18 million project. I should let you know, being that the existing Jaeger building stays, and Scott Jaeger, who's here tonight, has committed to that building will actually be the skin of it will be upgraded to match and changed to match the new architecture, assuming this project moves forward. So it'll be one integral project on the site. All that building is going to stay. So that $18 million does not include doing anything to that building. That's the new cost on the site. As we do with all these type projects, when we come before you and we talk to you, we have done a lot of homework before we get here. We've spent a lot of time with Scott Jaeger, Scott Baldwin, and Steve Harden and their team talking about and looking at their pro forma. And we know for a fact, given the rents that the market would allow to be charged here and the cost to develop this site, it would not happen but for this public-private partnership. As the slide shows, if they were to develop without any public investment, have to pay for the garage themselves, the return on money would be in the low 5 range. And that's just not something that a bank's going to loan money on, nor is it something that a developer's going to want to invest in, because there's other opportunities where they can get a better rate of return. So as we look at that, we looked at what can we do as a town to incentivize the development, get the development to where the developer doesn't have a windfall by any means, but can earn a reasonable return given the risk. And on this project, we targeted this 8 to 9% range, which is a fair return given the type of development. And so the package, if you will, that's before you tonight gets the developer to that 8 to 9% return. There, the last bullet, the developer's investment in the project will be approximately $12 million. So just a few more, and I'm going to go through these kind of quickly, but just a few more bullets on the project agreement that's before you. The town contributes the KFC parcel, which you purchased in early 2013. You would waive any development fees related to the development. Jaeger contributes the parking lot for the garage to be built on. Jaeger builds the project, including the garage, pursuant to approved plans that we'd be very involved in reviewing and approving. The town owns the parking garage for the term of the financing, which is anticipated to be 25 years. After that, Jaeger takes ownership of the garage, and the town retains perpetual parking rights in those evening hours and the weekend hours. The town contributes $6 million to fund the garage and site improvements generally in the area. The garage is anticipated to cost in the low $5 million range. That is not yet fully designed, so we'll not for sure know exactly where that is. But to the extent there's any money left over, the developer can draw that to finish out, to pay other project costs. But the fact remains that the developer's investing the $12 million, and the town's investment, regardless of what the garage costs or anything else costs, is limited to that $6 million. In order for this project to be financed, there is a master lease component that I'll go into in more detail on the next slide. I think you'll appreciate the structure of that master lease. Another bullet, the Jaeger pays minimum property taxes, as we've done on all these deals, regardless if assessments change one day. Again, that helps us minimize our risk on the TIF bond payments that would need to be made. And finally, if the project were to sell in the first 5 years, with the idea being that the public's invested money in the project, and now the developer, year 1, year 2, year 3, has just done a quick flip and made money and pulled out essentially that public money. We want to make sure that didn't happen without return back to us. And so if that were to happen, then the town would share in the gain on the sale of that building, and with the investment being the town's land being contributed to the project, and that resulting in about a 10% share. Okay,
That would be just on the building, not the parking garage or anything.
That's correct, yeah. So the parking garage would remain owned by the town during the term of the financing. So with respect to the master lease, again, this is purely a mechanism to make this project happen today versus 2-3 years in the future. If the developer went out and got this thing 100% pre-leased by credit tenants, then they can go to a bank and borrow the money. But right now, the project will have, once they sign their lease with Community Health, have a 22,000 square foot lease, and so there needs to be some other support on the remaining space to make sure this building can start this year if it gets approved tonight. And so it's purely a financing mechanism. And this is how it would work. So the RDC would sign a lease with the developer. That lease payment is designed solely to make sure the developer can pay debt service. In other words, just to satisfy the developer's bank. The whole lease is set up so that the developer does not pull out any profit. Not $1 of profit until the town's risk is essentially zero and not making any of those payments. So that number is estimated to be $393,000 per year, if plus our allocation of taxes for the building and expenses. That's assuming the only lease to sign is Community Health's lease, which, by the way, is a contingency of the whole deal. So if that lease is not signed, then even the contract, the town's not bound. No lease was signed, then the town would have to pay $393,000 per year. But there's some really important things I need to follow up with you on that one, because that's obviously a big number. The first thing is it's reduced by new leases. So they sign a lease with another XYZ company, and that company is going to pay $100,000 a year in rent. Then the town's payment goes just right down automatically right there by $100,000 and becomes $293,000. And then I mentioned this, that Jaeger, the developer, does not make any profit until the RDC's obligation is reduced to zero. And this is a key component. So if the RDC has to make a master lease payment, so it's not leased up enough that the debt service is covered, then the documents actually require that the developer pay the town that 5 days before the town has to pay it. Now, it may seem like, why is all that going on? Again, think about it, it's just to make the bank comfortable that ultimately if the developer doesn't pay the town still has to pay the bank. And that's why that's required. And so it begs the question, well, what happens if the developer doesn't pay the town, right? So I want to cover that next. And so if that happens and the developer doesn't make that payment toward the town's actually out money, the master lease is structured so that every dollar that occurs would translate directly into equity in the project. And as that last bullet says, if at any time the town is owed more than $377,000, which is just a little bit less than 1 year's rent, less expenses and taxes, then the town can deliver a notice to the developer and say, hey, pay us back, and if within so many days. And then if the developer doesn't do that, then the town takes ownership of the building. So that's the hammer over the developer to make sure that that happens. And another point there, and it's not stated here, but that also bears interest to the town during that time period that money is outstanding. So this is a situation where the developer and us as the team reviewing this fully don't expect there to be actually any outlay on the town's behalf on this master lease, but there are protections in there in case there are. So that's the master lease, and I can go into more detail on that if you have questions. So another point that we cover on all these projects is the debt service, obviously on the TIF bonds. To pay for the garage would be approximately $544,000. It's not quite. That looks like that's kind of a specific number, but that's just an estimate given current interest rates and the term of the bonds. Projected new tax increment from the property. This is just the increment. It's about $140,000. That's over existing taxes there. And again, that difference between those two, as you know, is paid from existing tax increment coming into the town today, so it doesn't have a direct effect on tax rates today. Just another point that I wanted to add to this presentation, because it's become more clear to me how this actually works. I want to point out with the schools, with the referendums the schools have, the 2 capital referendums and the 1 operating referendum, new projects, even if they're in a TIF, do have a positive impact on that. So with respect to the capital referendums, new AV just adds into the pool of AV that's there to support what's needed to collect, and actually then has some small, very small, but these things add up, some small effect on the tax rate. With the operating referendum, it's actually more of a direct benefit because that's a set rate. That's 10 cents per 100, and so which is not captured in the TIF. So for a new project that comes on, that actually generates more dollars delivered to the school in that year that those taxes are paid. So it's not a huge number, but this all adds up. So if this is assessed at the $7 to $8 million range, that could be $7,000 or $8,000 that's added to the school each year.
But Tom, I mean, just for clarity, just to understand that a little deeper, 10 cents per 100 assessed value. So this adds to the assessed value, but it doesn't contribute to that, right? Or is it? Or does it? Or
Say
does
it
it
again?
just? So you described the 10 cents on the 100 assessed value, which determines what the school can collect.
Right.
But then who do they collect it from? Will this property contribute to that, or because it's in the TIF, is it sequestered?
No, it's not sequestered. That's the point with
So
both.
it still contributes.
It still contributes. That's correct. Yeah, and that's all done at the county level. So the distribution the town would get simply does not include the operating referendum, and that would be distributed to the school.
Okay, so the operating referendum for the school applies across the whole taxing entity and TIFs do not have
Right.
an exclusionary benefit.
That's correct. That's right.
Right, and I find that very important because we continue to get questions at our level about the effects that TIF have on schools. And I know the legislature took action through the last few sessions to ensure that schools weren't going to be burdened, if you will, or didn't collect their fair share of some of the TIFs that people were putting in. They're looking at TIF reform again down there, right? And these are things that are taken in very good conscience by the town officials and the school. And we need to make sure that we understand that by doing this, you're helping out the community in whole with a lot of things Tom is talking about, but we're not taking money away from the schools.
Yeah,
And the other side of it is you've got a continuing AV which sits on that property. And that AV is still captured at the schools at then what would end up being a 3%. Scott, I can't help me out there.
I think to make a general comment about it, the base is set, so you're not
Correct.
going to go below. You're going to capture anything above it in terms of a TIF.
TIF.
In terms of the schools, on their operating referendum and their capital referendum, TIFs are a moot point. They don't recognize TIFs whatsoever. In their capital and transportation funds, the only argument someone could make that we're impacting the schools negatively would be to say that all this additional growth that's happening is being captured, and therefore your tax rate is higher, and therefore you may have an adverse impact of a circuit breaker. That would be the only thing. But then the question would be, would have any of this been there if it weren't for the TIF? So I think a lot of times there's a lot of confusion because prior to 2008 and the property tax legislation changes that happened, this was a common theme among many people about TIFs. TIFs were bad for schools. But keep in mind the vast majority of funding that schools get today is brought to us from the state of Indiana, and the revenue comes directly from the state of Indiana, not local property taxes.
And I think you got to maintain those points as we continue to look forward, because there continues to be a lot of confusion out in the general public about how TIF does affect schools and how it doesn't affect schools. So I appreciate the clarity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
This, I think, is helpful as we think about redevelopment. Generally, it's not just about a fast food building being replaced with a bigger building that someone might think is a better looking building or a taller building, so therefore you like it. I mean, it has real sustainable impact on the community. And so I put together this slide before and after with this particular project. So our use today is fast food in a parking lot, the one that serves the fast food and the one that serves the existing Jaeger building. In the future, it'll be medical office, retail, and a parking garage. The assessed value today is the 1.4 million number. Just our estimate in projecting the taxes is about a $7.75 million AV when the project is included, and that does not include the garage, which would not be taxable when the town owns it. Taxes generated from that, again, that's an actual number on the left of what the KFC, and then my estimate on what the taxes would come from the parking lot. That's what would come in the future. On the right, $160,000, and I want to be clear, obviously, we all know, I think you all know, that will be captured by the TIF, or the increase, so the increment. So there's still that piece, as you pointed out, Councilor Peterson, that goes to the schools from the base, but then the increment of that is captured in the TIF. But the reason you do TIF is that at the end of that 25 years, the assessed value just drops onto the tax rolls. Okay, so it's that future generation that benefits from that TIF investment today. With respect to jobs, I got to really do some estimates here, but I think it makes the point, and that is that typically a fast food restaurant would have about one employee per 100 square feet. Well, that's part-time employment, as you know, but that would estimate 30 to 40 people were working in that KFC restaurant. If we go somewhere in the range of 3.5 to 4 employees per 1,000 square feet in the office building, we might be higher than that in the medical area, but I would try to stay conservative. We'll have 200 to 240 people working on the property. Wages, and again, these are estimates, but I think it's helpful to make the point. We got the numbers on the left from just Indiana survey that was done by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics in 2012 for fast food wages, and then on the right is, again, just my estimate of what the range of wages that might be in an office building. We do know on the one to the right, Community Health has shared with us average wages that they think will be in that building, and as that bottom number shows, they're expected to be in the low $80,000 range, which I'm sure includes physicians and physicians' assistants and techs and nurses and administration all lumped together. But so we know that number is a given. And then I extrapolated what the COET revenue would be to the overall county. So this is the county number, so it's not the town share, which, you know, that's a complicated formula how that gets allocated. About $8,700 with the KFC, if you will, the KFC payroll, and then estimated about $132,000 after redevelopment. And then finally, a more tangible sort of touch it, feel it, you know, what's it mean to me kind of thing, is parking. There's currently no public parking on the site today, and there will be in the future with over 300 spaces, give or take, available for all that evening parking, and then every weekend and every holiday as well. So that's the before and after shot of what kind of redevelopment means in this specific instance. We can do one of these, you know, for every project that we've done and add them all up, and it begins to make a lot of sense, I think. So where we are, next steps, the project agreement is approved. It will be signed in the next few days. There's a 90-day due diligence period for both sides, really, but really Jaeger Properties has the most due diligence to do. We need to look at things like, are there any environmental issues on the garage parcel, some things like that, which are a little more straightforward for us. But following that, there would be, actually during the same time, there would be lots of other public meetings, as you know, with the RDC, the EDC, the Town Center Review Committee, would occur throughout the spring. The closing is projected for June, and with the summer construction start. With respect to what happens tonight, I'm going to invite Steve Harden up to talk a little bit about the project from Jaeger's perspective. But following that, we'll be coming back to the podium to ask you for the project agreement to be considered tonight with Town Council acting first. Then we can kind of make it. You still don't yet have a quorum, but we could do EDC and RDC as well. So with that,
Tom, on your presentation, when would you like some clarifying questions, after Steve or now?
Yeah, I think that may make sense for Steve and I to both sort of address those questions, so I think that would be great.
Okay.
Steve, you want to come up? Scott, you just tell me what yours was called. We had a lot of presentations on here tonight. Thank you. Yep.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a Fisher's resident and attorney with the law firm of Baker Daniels. I'm very pleased to be here this evening as part of the Yeager team. With me from the Yeager team is Scott Yeager and Scott Baldwin. So if you have any particular questions for us, we'll be happy to talk about that. First off, we'd like to thank the town and particularly Scott Fadness, Tom Dickey, and Shelby Bowen, who have been our guiders through this process, have given good direction. We know that they have consulted with the town council. They've done a great job of providing us the direction and guidance that you've given to them, and it's been an excellent and exciting time to be working with them as we move forward with this project. A little bit about the Yeager Properties. Scott Yeager started the business. They primarily construct, own, and operate commercial properties, have done projects in Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and Texas. Currently, Yeager Property has under its portfolio 10 office buildings in Indiana and Texas, 2 are in Texas. As a testament to their success and strategy and market acumen, they have over 95% occupancy in all 10 of those buildings. 2 of their buildings are existing here in the town of Fishers, representing a little bit over a $7 million investment. They have won a number of awards for their architectural design, most recently in McKinney, Texas, and also in Carmel for a redevelopment of a project that they did in Carmel in recent years. Some of the questions that people might ask: why Fishers? Why is the Yeager team working with the town on this particular project? Well, first off, it's very infectious working with the town staff. Scott Fadness, Tom Dickey, and Shelby Bowen have done a great job of really sharing the council's vision for what downtown Fishers can be all about. And the Yeager team is very excited to be part of the Nickel Plate District, very excited to be a continued part of the growth in downtown Fishers for a lot of reasons. Great demographics here in the town. It's a great place to live, work, and play. We've heard that so many times, and lots of communities say it, but it's really true here in Fishers. It's a great location. It's located near the town hall center. It's located near other retail. And Tom Dickey went through the infrastructure improvements that the town is investing in. Those investments and decisions by the town council greatly impact the desire and the excitement from the Yeager team to want to be part of this. We talked a little bit about the strong community leadership and vision that starts at the top with the town council and is passed on through the rest of the department heads here in the town of Fishers. But the town speaks with one voice. It's clear. The vision is known. There's a path to go forward, and it's exciting to be part of it. There's an extremely positive long-term growth forecast for the town of Fishers and for the downtown. We're very excited to be part of it. Just going to talk a little bit about the site plan and building renderings to give you a little bit of insight in what we've been working with this town on. Tom showed you the concept plan earlier. From the right-hand side going to the left, similarly is the 116th Street is on the right, Lantern Road is on the bottom of the screen, and then to the north is the existing Yeager building. So you can see that's the current site plan, how the property lays out with the mixed-use medical office building along 116th Street. Lantern Road has approximately 9,000 square feet of activated space, including retail and office, and we anticipate, again, retail and office on the first floor, and the second, third floor office. Here's the updated current rendering. This is a shot from 116th and Lantern, looking northeast. 116th Street is to your right, Lantern Road is to the left. And this is a look along Lantern Road. The guidance that we received from the town so far has been to take a look at something that will be timeless, possibly a little bit more modern than what we see in the town hall or the town center area proper, and that's the direction that we've taken with high-quality materials and fit and finish. Some of the amenities within the project include second and third floor terrace patios. And if you look kind of in the middle of the shot along Lantern, you'll see two openings that are there. Those are second and third floor terrace patios. They'll be for outdoor enjoyment, both for the office building, the retail office space, and other dwellers that are coming to the restaurants and other tenant uses. First floor retail spaces, again, the anticipation is along Lantern. We'll have retail along the 9,000 or the 3,000 square feet on the Lantern side, as well as along the first floor of the 116th Street, wrapping the corner there at Lantern. The design is integrated, so when this is all complete, you'll see it'll look like one unified building, incorporating the existing Jaeger building, the parking structure, the 9,000 square feet of space along Lantern, and the 51,000 square feet of space along 116th Street. The parking is shared, and we're very excited about the opportunity to be able to bring a substantial restaurant to this project as well for downtown. The amenities also include the access to town center and the Nickel Plate Trail. Again, in summary, the Jaeger team is extremely excited to be here, to be working with the town for this exciting development. We thank the town council and the other bodies that are here this evening for the leadership and guidance and vision that the town has given to the development community. It makes it much easier to do business in a community where the leadership is clear and provides guidance and direction for what the town would like to see. And then the development community can work with the town staff to be able to deliver on that guidance and direction that the town has given. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for?
Yeah, so I think at this time it'd be great to open up the questions for either Steve or I or the developer team who's here as well, from any of the bodies that are here, I think.
So maybe, and I don't know if you have to refer back to a couple of your PowerPoints, Tom. Maybe an easy one for Steve to start off. Just for the audience point of view, 7,000 square foot restaurant, when you factor in, back, the actual kitchen area and other amenities, how many seats does that 7,000 square foot restaurant? Is that 50 seat restaurant, 100 seat restaurant? Just trying to get a scope of the level. Ballpark.
There's not a specific estimate of that right now. We've been talking about possibly a white tablecloth type of restaurant. Okay. And depending upon what the actual type of restaurant that comes in will dictate the size and the number of spots that we'll have.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. A couple of questions on the master lease concept. If we want to look at calculating the downside, the absolute downside for the town, we've put in the land, and we're doing the $6 million, I think it was 6, on the parking garage. Mm-hmm. And then the 370 something on the guaranteed lease, RDC lease.
Right.
You made a couple of comments about that the developers, would not see a sort of a return on investment. And now is that until, but to move forward, we have the RDC lease and a community lease. And between the two of those, the bank will finance the remaining portion of the equity to move the project forward. So right out of the gate, you've got rental income from those two entities, right? And we're going to want that. Really, we're flowing that back through to ourselves. That the RDC lease is flowing back to service the debt.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, is there any profitability or return on investment for the developer from the community piece, or as you start getting takedowns on the guaranteed lease from the RDC, at what point is the developer able to enjoy some return?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I've got a numbers here, though, if we can get them up on the screen from the projector.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. Good. Let me try to walk through using this, and I think this will help answer your question. The general answer to your question is the developer does not make any profit from the community health lease or any additional leases that are signed until such time as the town's master lease is zero.
Okay,
And
well,
let
that was
yeah.
the good answer. That's what I wanted to hear.
I've made this, can I just go through these numbers? Because I'm really
Sure.
proud that you asked the question.
But
and
it's
I
good to
made
start
this
with the
spreadsheet.
takeaway.
So this is an estimate of the debt service that will be required to be paid on the project, and again, we'll know that exact number because we'll be looking at their project loan documents. This is an estimate of the community health NOI, probably in the ballpark, but I'm sure it's not exact. So this number would be what the town is required to pay on when master lease payments come due if no other leases have been signed. One point that I've not made, which is important, is that the master lease and the project agreement requires that Jaeger, and they would do this anyways, require fund lease-up interest in their project loan. And so there's going to be 18 months after substantial completion where we know there's money. If we're having to make a payment, we know we're getting the money from them because it has to be in an account. And so we're really, for sure, there's no master lease payments for 18 months after substantial completion. But after that point, this is how our rent is calculated. So that's the number that results from that math. That's how much square feet is not leased by community, and that's the math. That'd be $1,353 plus expenses. Now, a new lease is signed. They sign a lease for 10,000 square feet, great restaurant on the first floor, $20 a square foot, which I'm sure is low for a restaurant, so they wouldn't sign that deal, but let's assume they have. The master lease obligation from up here, remember, is $393,000. That lease is going to generate $200,000 of income. That comes right off that number. So the town now has to fund $193,000. You divide that by the remaining square footage that's left that the town's leasing, and the town's rate's gone down. And so there is no, again, so that has to be zero before there's any income that flows to the developer.
And you mentioned in the very, very unlikely occurrence that, there is a debt service that would exceed, or a payment due to the RDC that doesn't float, if you will. And I wasn't sure of the time limit in which the town or the RDC would take, as you meant, ownership of the building. And so I wasn't sure if the Jaeger, the other equity investors would have some residual ownership or some residual rights. Is this more of just the town would take over the principal ownership and the management of it, whereas then at what point would they still retain residual ownership rights?
So there's not a specific time frame attached to it. It's attached. What drives it is how much money the town is out, and that number was estimated to be about 1 year of no other leases being signed. That's why it's $377,000, and it was just agreed upon at a different time as to why it doesn't exactly match the 393. But again, those numbers are all subject to what is the final number. So let's say it is that 393 or 377 number. That, if no other leases are signed, that's going to take 1 year to build up. So it'll be 1 year, no leases are signed, we've been making the payments, they've not been paying the town, then you can exercise it. So, but it could take longer if they have leased some up, and you're not, instead of paying $390-some thousand, you're paying half of that. So it could take a longer period of time to hit that number. But once you hit that number, that high 300 number, what happens is you send them notice, and they have, I think it's 90 days to write a check plus interest to repay you in full, or they have to hand you the deed and they're out completely. The town, the RDC then actually owns the building.
No residual claims.
No residual claims, no nothing. They hand you the deed, and I mean that's the clawback in this project.
Okay. And so I'm just thinking, to get momentum, in some regards, it's a negotiation on the rent to get other tenants other than community in. Knowing, though, that if you lower the rent too long or keep the rent too low on properties, you may be building momentum, but you've got this empty space, fewer units to rent, that will then, to make up for the money, you've got to rent them at a much higher rate at some point.
Mm-hmm, right.
So what's the dynamic there generally?
I'll address it from how we're thinking about it, and then either Steve or Scott Baldwin maybe could address it from just how they're thinking about it. So we have some other rights in the agreement because of the issue that you raised, and how long does it set vacant if you're asking 20, too much money for the market.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, the first, let's just think of the non-community as being, 100%. You lease out in the first 2 years, 70% of that, but at a below-market rate to get a tenant in, if you will, and to start to defray. And then it's hard to rent off the remaining 30% because you need, $30, $35 to make up.
Yeah, so is the question, or possibly is it this, that can they do that and then just ride the town's master lease?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the what's attached to the project agreement is a master lease term sheet, which has the general provisions. But the way we've actually just concepted the idea of the master lease in the project that was already approved with Meyer Nagem, this one and another one that we're looking at, is that if they're going to lease it below what our master lease payment is at the time, then it requires our consent.
Okay.
So that can't happen, because what you described could actually happen. They could write our master lease and give somebody a low rent for a couple of years to get it going, but that's a protection there.
Yeah. And sometimes you do that to build momentum.
Yeah,
have a
and that may
longer-term
be-
lease agreement. First couple of years are low, with the balloon kind of.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
I just had a couple questions. For Steve or Scott, it's more of a curiosity. Do you guys see any issues with, on the south side of your existing building, you're going to have a parking garage now that's going to be fairly close. I think there's a gap there. Do you guys see any problem with, I guess, those tenants on that side? Is there something to help mitigate that?
No. They've looked at that and have put a lot of time into that. It'll be at least a 20-foot space in between with a living green wall designed, so it'll have some type of natural green living material that'll be going up along the side of the parking structure, which we think will be attractive and unique for that area.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I know some of it's to be designed, but I just, it's such a small building. I don't know if it's a little bit too busy. I'll leave that up to you guys as you work through that, but that was the only thing I noticed when it's, I know on the Lantern side it'll be a little bit bigger, but on the 116th Street side, it's not a huge property, but it's something that I know is probably bigger than you would think when you put a building up at the road.
I think that's a fair comment about the architecture, and I would tell you that we are excited about the sort of the direction of the architecture and the more modern kind of feel. And I think we've said before, there's not a cookie cutter approach to every building has to look like this. We actually like the differences in architecture. But that'll be, there'll be design review meetings and massing studies, which I know they've done on their end, but we'll do them as a group to make sure we think that all fits together right.
Okay. Since we've had several of these, if I could, I just want to take a couple minutes and kind of encapsulate just how I view how the downtown has gone. And I think it's going very, very well. But if you think back to 2007, 8, 9, I know Scott will remember this. We had, to a certain extent, one developer that wanted to come in and do kind of a whole approach. And that might have been fine, but when the recession hit, that just wasn't going to be a viable option. So we took that time to really work with all the residents. We had various meetings, probably 5 or 6 throughout, I think, 2008, 2009, to kind of work through. Now, if you go way, way back to, I think 1996 was the last plan that we had for the downtown. They called the town center zoning and kind of guided it in one direction. So the feeling was, well, if you want to deviate that from a little bit, let's go through the whole thing. So we did that and came up with a plan, and to a certain extent, it came up with, when you think about a downtown, it's not a whole approach. It's I always think of it as a puzzle in a box. You don't buy a puzzle put together. You buy it with pieces, and then you start to put it together, and over time it takes shape. Some of those pieces are the public sector, some are the private sector, and they start to work together over time. I think that some of these buildings that we've been able to put together are a part of that. And the plan that's actually there and in place, I think, Tom, you've done a good job of implementing things that are in harmony with that. I think the amphitheater is one that you have 40,000 cars a day on 116th Street, and we wanted to give them a reason to come to the downtown and not just drive right by it. And I think, Tony, with 60,000 people that have come through, I think that's great. Now, over the next couple of years, you'll be able to come to concerts, and hopefully it's people even outside the community. You come and you drive away and you say, what is that building? Or look at that restaurant. And then they'll start to think of Fishers, I think, in a different light. And I think over time it'll become a destination for all those things. The buildings we've been able to put in, I like all of those for a couple of reasons. One is What we are doing from the public sector, we are incentivizing, in essence, parking. We're incentivizing some utilities and the other things that are needed. We're not going to own the building. We're not going to do other things other than help incentivize where we need to help the parking and the other things so that future projects can come in. Because the goal would be, and you did a great job when you had the map, it kind of showed how everything's not clumped, it's in different areas, so that over time, the adjacent parcels, they're going to come by and they're going to have some relief by having some extra parking nearby, some utilities, and some of those roads. So people will be come in and they won't, in essence, need any big public incentive. They'll be able to come in and utilize what's been built next door. So I think that's good to help us move forward. But that was the main thing that I liked about what we're doing here is we're incentivizing, but we're incentivizing things that we're not going to own for the long term. We're not going to have huge maintenance costs. We're not going to have some things that maybe surrounding communities do. There are some maintenance things. There are some things that we need to think through, but at the same time, it's not going to be, I think, a huge burden that we'll have. But in a nutshell, I think going forward, I think it's good use of, we've got a certain amount in a TIF bucket, and we're doing several projects to help out with that, and we're not doing, everything under the sun. I know the people are kind of in the business. They know that the time that you guys put in, these things don't just happen, but I think the things that have happened, I think are going to be positive. And then the traffic things that you just mentioned, I know that we haven't really clarified that for everybody, but I think it's good as that starts to roll forward. I think they'll really see that it's been well thought out and it's a way to have relief to keep people off 116th Street if you don't have a need to go there. But at the same time, it'll help you pull off of that road. And just in a nutshell, I think this is a good project. I think this one, the Flaherty project and Meyer-Najum, show that the approach is good. Those are good starting points. And I think that over the next 3 to 4 years will be very exciting to see what some of the adjacent properties do. And I'd like to thank Tom and Shelby and, of course, Scott, because these things don't happen. They don't happen overnight, and it's just all the due diligence to get those things done. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Good, thanks, David.
John, if I can, I also want to take a moment here to thank not only Tom and his staff, Shelby and Scott Fadness for the work put in on this, but certainly our boards and commissions who have given us some invaluable insight to looking through these transactions. I think that's been extremely beneficial. I like the fact that we're actually getting to use these boards a little bit more frequently than we have maybe in the past. And certainly my both friends, Scott's over here, I've been a tenant at the Fisher 2 building for 6 years, almost 6 months short of the grand opening of that building. I'm a huge fan of the Yeager properties, and I think I got you guys meeting together very quickly after I got elected back then, Scott, with the town staff. And kind of coming back full circle to, a number of things we talked about towards the tail end of last year, where there was a lot of press given on, things that were happening here in the town and things that you can and can't talk about. This is yet another project that was alluded to during that time frame where, these economic development deals, take a while to get going, right? They take a while to come to fruition, and they're not always ready to talk about immediately until these deals are all buttoned up. And you can start to see, and Tom, the slide at the very beginning of the presentation was spectacular. Talking about the downtown aerials and talking about the things we've done down here downtown and continue to look at down. And I know that that's not done yet, okay? We're privy up here to some other stuff that may be happening here very quickly of those things that are continuing to occur. And it makes me feel very good because one of those things which I talked about in coming onto the council when I decided to run for council was economic development and investment in the community and making sure that we're investing those dollars wisely that'll pay off. Looking at this transaction alone, you're starting to see the payback in terms of tax dollars, not only immediately, but for future generations. And you may be happy about the parking, which I am too, okay? But I'm looking at the job numbers that continue to create down there. Continue to look at the feet traffic that puts down here, which is going to attract the business here into town. That's going to go ahead and lease up the buildings that we're building down here, because I'm sure these guys aren't intending on leaving these buildings vacant once you go down there. So again, there's a kind of a systemic action which is going to happen here due to all the projects we continue to have. And hopefully the public is going to be very pleased with the end product. I can tell you with all the hours that we put in and staff's put in and the boards and commissions have put into these projects, it's an exciting time to be here in Fishers. Exciting time because we're not standing still. We're not overly leveraging ourselves like some of our other friends around the state, but I think we're investing very wisely in the future of this soon-to-be city. And I can't be happier of everything that's gone on so far today.
And for the boards and commissions, so I'd like to thank you guys as well. I probably should have done that, but at the same time, we're in the same room, and I think other communities do it different. We're all talking at the same time, and and analyzing it the same way at the same time.
Other questions or comments? Certainly, I will certainly echo,
Oh, there was one, yeah, there's some
Please.
questions over here. Go ahead.
Tom, on the slide deck that you pulled up at the beginning, it was kind of a before and after. I wasn't sure if I was reading it right or not, but we had the number of jobs before and after. Is that the incremental growth that community health will be adding from the 30 to the 240?
No,
Did I read that right,
I
or-
get your question. No, it's not. No. So
Okay.
the before and after, the before is the land use before and the land use after. So the 30 to 40 is that estimate of restaurant jobs that are in that property. It's a fast food restaurant was the question. Yeah, so if it were KFC or if it were bought instead by the town, bought by somebody else, that's our best shot at how many people are there. Yeah.
other questions, comments? I think plenty's been said. This is a great project. Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Yeager, we certainly appreciate, look forward to working with you and being partners in your success, and looking forward to it.
Great. So if there are no other
this-
questions or comments, I had the order of.
So council goes first?
Yeah,
and-
so if we do, I think it'd be great. I'll just
Okay,
use
at
this.
this point, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, it's item 15, correct, John?
That is correct, yes.
15 R020314B.
Second.
Motion by Pete, second by Stewart. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you.
EDC, Brian.
I'll entertain a motion to approve EDC 02R0203-214. You have to make the motion.
I second the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, so you're moving, Josh is moving, you're
Josh
seconding.
moving, I'll
Okay,
second.
great.
All in favor? Aye.
Good, thank you. RDC.
We will entertain Resolution FRC 07R0203-2014.
I motion to approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Great, thank you. I think that concludes our presentation. Sorry we took so much time, but I'm excited to get through it and look forward to seeing the project move forward. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. A couple things. We're going to shift things around a little bit because we're going to need a little more work from you gentlemen tonight as well. It's item 13 and item 14 we're going to move forward on the agenda to right now. And I'm going to lose my bet with Pete at keeping the meeting to 52 minutes. But he was here running the meeting last week while I was away. But I will say we're doing a lot. We're going to accomplish a lot more in this meeting than we did when you ran it. So there. But we're going to do item 13.
John, one quick note.
Yes.
The other boards do not need to be
They
on
do not
this.
need to be here? I
We
was
need
told they needed to be.
signatures, so before any of them
Leave.
take off, we need their signatures.
Right, can't leave
But
until you
not
sign something.
not for the next item.
Okay. Let's go ahead. And after we're done with item 13 and 14, we'll recess just for a moment to let you folks excuse yourselves.
Okay.
Make sure you sign your documents before you get out of here, too.
Ready?
Please.
Good evening, Council. I'm Tim Gropp. I'm the Assistant Director of Economic Development for the town. I'm here tonight to present the next two resolutions regarding an economic development agreement with OSSIP Optometry and the real estate holding companies. OSSIP Optometry has been providing state-of-the-art eye care since 1952. They currently operate over 40 optometry centers in both Illinois and Indiana, most of which are in central Indiana here. And they've been growing rapidly over the last 3 years as we've been coming out of the recession, and they're hoping to continue that growth into the future. There are two parts of a project I'd like to present to you tonight. The first one is about an optometry office. OSSIP currently leases space for their office located at 7840 East 96th Street in Fishers. In 2011, OSSIP Real Estate purchased the building at 7864 Cross Point Commons, which had been vacant for some time. This is formerly known casually in town as the Preston Rocks Building. And I have a visual of that building, where it's located. The bottom portion here is 96th Street. Peterson's is on the corner, Egg Road, along 96th. The building's been vacant since they purchased it, but the intent is to renovate the facility later this year and create a flagship prototype state-of-the-art optometry clinic for OSSIP Optometry. This project would move the current facility, retaining 15 jobs in the community. They would consolidate another practice outside of Fishers, relocating at least 8 jobs, and create up to 19 new jobs by 2018, paying an average wage of $23.19. There would also be some additional possibly medical office space on the second floor of this facility as well. The second half of this project would be OSSIP Optometry currently has their central business operations, their headquarters, if you will, located in Fort Benjamin Harrison. They're considering the purchase of Concourse 4, which is located at 9795 Cross Point Boulevard. This is the Marsh headquarters here. I-69 you can see on there, and that's a 41,121 square feet. It currently has 2 tenants in a portion of it. There's about 35,000 square feet vacant. OSSIP Real Estate Holdings would purchase the building and then lease it to OSSIP Optometry. Initial spot would be about 23,000 with the ability to grow into about 35,000 square feet. The new headquarters would relocate 46 jobs, and they're projected to add approximately 40 new jobs by 2018, paying approximately $28 per hour. In total, these projects combined would retain 15 jobs, relocate 54 to Fishers, and create 59 new full-time equivalent positions by 2018. It would also fill a currently vacant building and up to 35,000 square feet of vacant space in Concourse 4. The Economic Development Agreement before you contemplates the approval of a 2-year vacant building deduction for the building at 7864 Cross Point Commons. That would be the optometry clinic building, the first facility I put up there. And a waiver of certain development fees on both buildings, excluding impact fees. The first resolution consideration is for the Economic Development Agreement with OSSIP Optometry and the approval of the incentives pending the required process for the tax abatement. Dr. OSSIP is in the audience tonight if you'd like to ask any questions, or be happy to answer anything as well on this resolution.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim, or Dr. OSSIP? Welcome.
Yeah, I just want to say I've watched that building struggle over the years. Excuse me, we've had a Harley Davidson shop in there at one time, and they failed, and then there was another business that went in there, and it's been vacant for quite a long time, and I'm glad to see we have a strong business going in there and can put some life back into that building. So welcome to the community.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve. Remind me, John, 13, since I'm looking at a very
Item
small
13?
screen.
Yes, 13.
Okay, approve item R020314.
Second.
Motion by Pete, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
The next resolution, number 14, Resolution 020314A, goes along with the Economic Development Agreement, the process to establish a vacant building tax abatement. You must first, the property must be in an economic revitalization area. So this is a several-step process. So the Economic Development Agreement you just approved actually is pending going through this process. The first step is to have a declaratory resolution deeming the property an economic revitalization area. The property does meet all the requirements the state law puts forward for this. We have posted public notice at the assessor's office today, and if approved, if the declaratory resolution is approved today, we will deliver public notice to overlapping taxing districts tomorrow. There's a 10-day period for that notification, and then we would come back on at your next council meeting for a public hearing and a confirmatory resolution on the establishment of the economic revitalization area.
Any questions for Tim?
Request, I'll make a motion to approve R 020314A.
Second?
Motion by Pete, second by Stewart. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tim.
John, yeah, we would ask
jump back.
to maybe take a quick break here, and also we'd like an opportunity for the Town Hall Building Corporation to meet. We could either do it hopefully out in the lobby, since we were able to get a quorum, so.
Okay. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Before we do that, let me, so just for the record, the EDC and RDC have already recessed, and so that was just, should let the record reflect that. And this is official notice that the meeting that was scheduled for here for the Town Hall Building Corporation is actually going to be moved to the central conference room. So if there's any public, yes, and you can vote there. So if there's anybody from the public that wants to attend that meeting, will be in the central conference room. Thank you for your patience, John.
Yes. Thank you.
We'll call the meeting back to order again, get back to work. Getting a little back on track with our agenda, moving on to item 6, ordinance 111813A. Request to approve an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to add the Nickel Plate District Code.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Dale Davis with the Community Development Department, and what I'm bringing back for you tonight for a second reading is the Nickel Plate District Code. This was at the Planning Commission for 2 different meetings where we sat through and ironed out some details, and now we're bringing it back for your consideration. There it is. This is the district outline. And just a note, as you've seen before, we did remove 2 small neighborhoods from the district because nothing was really planned for them, and they're single-family areas, which is not necessarily in keeping with the increased density proposed by this code. So while
When
this
did
was
when did that happen, after the Planning Commission?
no.
No.
Which ones were they on the map?
Between Commerce Park and Lantern Road, there's a little triangle of a few
Can you use the mouse?
right through here,
Okay, thank you.
and this little T here.
Okay, thank you.
So at Plan Commission, we had some major topics come up. The first being, we've looked at all these big developments as going through the process, and how will this code impact them? Well, the concern was, how will this affect all the smaller properties that will likely remain south of 116th Street? So we've looked at that, and I'll walk through that in a minute. Prohibited uses, especially surrounding the school, we had to address those. And we've added another section into the administration that specifically addresses prohibited uses surrounding schools. With the waiver system, there's appeals that go with that. The Plan Commission thought that those should go through the Board of Zoning Appeals if there's a waiver, so that change has been made. And there was a question of, well, it seems like a lot of responsibilities are shifting around, and they weren't really. So we've prepared a memo that's in your packet to say who has been responsible for what under the UDO and who is responsible for what now. This is a project we might be familiar with after tonight, the KFC building, which we've walked through a few times before. But this is one of those smaller developments that will definitely be impacted by this code. Now, if it were to expand south into that hatched out area, how would the code impact it? Well, the code would actually bring this building into conformance by its expansion. And it would not be able to function this way under the UDO. Under the UDO, the southern setback would be too narrow. Under the nickel plate code, it is in conformance. The new setbacks that would be required for the new street sections that are going into the nickel plate code would actually bring the sidewalk closer to the face of the building, so the setbacks would again be in conformance. The parking, that's another big issue with some of these smaller lots. Under the UDO, this property would basically be required to double their parking. But under nickel plate code, with just slightly expanding their parking lot and allowing for some on-street parking, it would work. Now, one thing that did come up through this review was most of these smaller homes that have been converted, they're not all 100% brick. They're not all, designed as a lot of modern structures we have. So we've actually added provisions for these kind of live, work, residential conversion buildings so that their architecture will be in conformance. Zoning, one area I wanted to highlight, and this came about with discussions with Sunblest, was we extended the downtown core out to the district edge. Sunblest asked us to make this change because as redevelopment occurs, the ground floor commercial ability of the downtown core that's not present in Village Center is something they really wanted to be able to use. Architecture. Since you've last seen it, we've revised the four-sided architecture requirement to deal with zero lot line buildings. And for alley-loaded buildings. To have four-sided architecture on a side of the building that is going to be adjacent to another is not the best use of those funds from what we saw. So we thought that could go towards hardier materials, public art, and really give something to the downtown. And we also addressed architecture for single-family structures, which wasn't really contemplated in the first version you saw. Landscape. We further defined what was needed for the streetscape, the tree grates, the types of trees, and just more detail of what needs to go where, who's responsible for building what. Parking. The original code did not contemplate surface parking lots, but it's become quite apparent to us that there's going to be an interim period where temporary parking in the form of surface parking lots will be needed. This code addresses that. So we can have temporary lots, but it also allows for those lots to be redeveloped. Lighting and signage. The buildings are going to be right up to the edge of the street. So the signage needs to be a more urban setup with the signs mounted to the building, projecting signage, pedestrian signage, and different lighting standards as well. And we've also been incorporating Public Works desires for different street lights in this area. With the street standards, these have not changed a lot since you've seen them last, but a trail is being added along Lantern to South Street to kind of create a loop around the nickel plate. This is one thing that Context Landscape Architecture and A&F Engineering are working on right now to make sure that our current street sections have enough width for them to make this proposed design work, along with the angled parking and all the other improvements that are proposed for Lantern Road. Administration. We have worked with Sunblest Apartments and the other surrounding property owners to make sure that their nonconformance, their other concerns with their property has all been taken care of, and that's the version that's included in your packet. And we've also consolidated the use of waivers so that instead of being scattered throughout the document, it's all more referenced, more unified. The public comment, which you've seen before, we have received one more letter since you last saw this, and that's the Pledge Realty Corp. That letter seemed to speak more towards engineering concerns, and we're happy to be aware of them, and we will work with them when actually comes time for design of these facilities. And a copy of that letter is in your packet. Before third reading, we need to continue to work with Context and A&F to make sure we have this Lantern Road and South Street section correct so that we're preserving enough right-of-way. We want to take one more look at the street and signage graphics just to make sure they are fitting with Public Works' overall design and that they're really presenting a consistent image. And as this is now going to be part of the UDO, which originally it was going to be standalone, we need to look through our definition section and eliminate any duplicates. We need to make sure that only the definitions that we're adding are in there. With that, we would like to hold the second reading.
Questions?
Yeah, I just want to ask a couple. So there are no more outstanding issues with the Sunblest Apartments? Everything's been worked out with them to their satisfaction?
Yes, that's all been worked out.
And the letter you had mentioned from the realty company that was, I think, representing the, what was the old lumber yard?
Correct.
As I recall, the issue was the alignment of the road, not so much to do with the actual changes to the zoning. So that's kind of outside of this agreement, whether that gets worked out or not. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Motion to have second reading?
Do we do public?
Any public input? We've had second reading.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was one other thing. Does this then, when this becomes, if it becomes approved at third reading, and we had the publishing time and so forth, that would eliminate the Town Center Review Committee, and then the Nickel Plate Committee would then kick in, is that right?
Yes. Yes, that's how it'll work. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7 on our agenda this evening, ordinance 010614. Request to approve an ordinance amending the adult family living PUD, second and third reading.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklakowski, Planner 2 with the Community Development Department. This item before you should be a familiar one. Again, we're asking for a second and third reading for this adult family living PUD text amendment, also known as Simply Dental, case number 15 TA 13. Just to refresh your memory on this is located almost smack dab in the middle of Fishers, just west of Brook School Road on 116th Street. More specifically, it's on the north side of 116th. North of the property is the Tamarisk neighborhood. To the south is the Arbor Glen neighborhood. And to the east is Rita's Backyard Garden Center. Just to give you a quick refresher, the petitioner would like to construct 2 single-story office buildings. If you'll recall, the original intent of the PUD was to do a 4-unit senior living use. Of course, as I mentioned, they'll be renaming the project to the Simply Dental PUD. The main difference in terms of what's happening now is the zoning, rather than being PUD-R, would go to a PUD-C, and it would amend the C1 zoning district standards in which only office uses are allowed. We specifically worked with the land use attorney to ensure that only specific office uses were allowed and nothing else from that C1 district in sensitivity to the residents nearby. In terms of some of the specifics on the project, this amendment would still retain the 30-foot wide landscape buffer that's adjacent to the residential areas. Since this item was presented to you at first reading, the applicant will be providing a 40-foot wide tree preservation zone at the rear. The intent was always to preserve the trees in the rear of the property, but now there's something more formal in the document to make sure that happens. Of course, in terms of lighting, it would be required that all the fixtures are what's called full cutoff. Everything would have to point downward. Parking, it still would not be allowed to exceed 125% of the UDO requirement. And of course, the architecture still contains a high amount of stone veneer and has more of an a residential feel to it. This here was the original concept plan, as you can see, for the senior living use. And then here is the revised concept plan that shows the buffering areas in the rear. With that, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to answer those. One item was, when the item went to the Plan Commission on January 14th, the Commission recommended approval unanimously. The one point of discussion that they had was they were wondering whether or not it was appropriate to have commercial uses at basically a mid-block point on 116th rather than as it's typically at the corners. What we advised was that this piece basically functions as an out parcel to some of that residential activity. So really, in order to develop the property at its highest and best use, probably the best way to go would be of some sort of commercial development with reasonable restrictions in place, and offices of a professional nature would certainly be appropriate as they're a low intensity. So with that, I can try to answer any questions, and the land use attorney is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Adam?
One question I had the last time, which I think it's kind of answered here, but it was, just say this was coming in for a zoning and you've got a commercial type use next to a residential type use to the west, and many times you'll have a side setback, but you'll have an extra amount if it's one use versus the other. Because we've got 10 feet here listed, and I know that we've got a 30-foot buffer on that side for the landscaping. Do you know what it would be if it was just, forget about the landscaping and things like that, if it was just the commercial type zoning versus the residential? I'm just trying to get a sense
Mr. George,
of where
in
they
terms
are.
of the setback, the pure
Yes.
setback that you're
Yes.
asking, offhand, I don't recall the actual setbacks. Steve may be able to provide that information. I don't want to give you a figure and give you something incorrect.
That's fine.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm pleased to be here representing Dr. Klaus on his proposed development here. I think if the question was what is the setback is 10 foot regardless of what the use is. The buffer yard is what changes. And so one of the questions you'd asked, I think, at that first reading was, let's make sure that we've got the same buffer yard. And when we were there at first reading, the concept plan showed a reduced buffer yard along the western boundary of the property. We had went back and had the engineers really look at that and scrub that to make sure that they were using the correct, accurate proportions. And so what you see now is we've got more than enough room to have the full 30-foot buffer with the plantings as shown by the ordinance. And so that's the 30-foot buffer is what would be required.
That is what is needed, which is what you show.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions for Adam before we open up for any public input? Thank you, Adam. Any public input? Anybody else? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
Thank you. Greg Purvis, 12271 Chiseled Stone Drive. I'm a member of the Sandstone Homeowners Association Board and live in Sandstone, a portion of which abuts this property just to the northeast. I'm here speaking just for myself, but I've talked to a number of people over the years as they've looked at one development or another proposed here. And I have to say, this particular proposal is far superior, certainly to the existing piece, which is a bit of an eyesore and has been often complained about, but also to the senior living proposal that was contemplated in the existing PUD, of which there were some concerns. The architecture seems to fit into the area well. It's going to be low intensity, low traffic, and traffic was one of the original concerns. The only concern that I could express, and I talked a little bit to Steve Harden about it beforehand, is lighting. because you have houses both in Tamarisk and Sandstone, the backs of which are going to face up to the parking lot for this dental office. Now, it's my understanding they're not going to have evening hours, and there's the design of the lights, and they're going to be cutoffs at some hour. I'm not sure which, but maybe Steve could address that just publicly so that I could take it back to our neighbors and let them know.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, when we had our neighbors meeting as well, that was a question that came up, and we shared with the neighbors, and as I shared with Greg just now earlier, the specifics that we have in the PUD ordinance provide that all the lights shall have at least full cutoff, and I describe what that is functionally. It's essentially the shoebox that directs the light downward, as well as that we have the specific provision that the lighting in the parking area shall be designed and maintained to be dimmed between the hours of 8:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. Thank you.
Dimmed or cut off, Steve?
Dimmed, just dimmed. That's correct. Yeah, thank you.
But, you know, as you articulated previously, a cutoff essentially, if you were to look at it at night, it's only going to cast a cone of light down into a specific targeted area. It's not going to be sort of isotropic. It's not going to be going out in all directions. So, you know, if you live off property, you will see that the ground is illuminated, but you're not going to get direct light towards you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Or questions for Adam? Thank you, Greg.
Are you ready for a motion?
Ready for a motion? We can suspend the rules and
Yeah, I would move that we suspend the rules and approve, what's the,
010614.
the 010614 on second reading.
motion by Mike, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to item 8. Request to approve an ordinance amending the Southeast Fishers PUD, Mill Ridge Farms.
Yes, this item before you is another PUD text amendment. If you'll recall, this appeared back on your January 8th meeting. Again, this is a text amendment for the Southeast Fishers PUD. It's known as Mill Ridge Farms. This particular project is located in the southeast portion of Fishers. It's right near Georgia Road and 104th Street. Again, it's surrounded by suburban residential on all sides, except for the east side for the time being. Right now it's a farm field, but its future plans are to be for the Steeplechase planned community. Some of the main items in this proposed amendment includes the increase in the number of lots from 70 to 75. There would be a slight increase in the dwelling units per acre. As was pointed out at the previous meeting, this would be a gated community. The main entrance access point is from 104th Street. And again, there would be emergency access only to Georgia Road. Now, from the original PUD, the lot sizes and the setbacks, that remains unchanged. We're still looking at about 9,100 square foot lots with typical suburban setbacks. Now, in terms of when this item was at the Plan Commission, one of the items that we still needed to work out dealt with having some enhanced amenities in the neighborhood, given the fact that there would be a small loss in the amount of open space and that there would be an increase in density. The developer has committed to placing 19 trees around the detention pond. They would also create some sort of seating with a pergola or a gazebo or a fire pit, again with some shrubs and some trees around that to really act as a focal point when you drive into the neighborhood, and of course, would also act as a gathering point. Again, just to refresh your memory on the architecture, it's similar to a couple other projects around the area in Carmel and Zionsville. The intent is to have stone veneer and the fiber cement siding, and there would be about a 10-foot building separation between the units. So what this shows here is the original plan back in 2007. Again, it features a looped road. There were 2 access points. The revised plan removes that access point to the south because it is a gated community, and it moves it out towards Georgia Road. This here shows what the intended architecture would be like. And then here is a photo of the actual example. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them. And of course, land use attorney, Mr. Harden, is here as well. Thank you.
Any questions for Adam?
Chief Aruso, when that, it's a gated area, are there any things that we need to ask for, at least from the fire department, as far as access, or do you probably just work those out when you get done?
Yes, preferably 2 ways in, 2 way out, and we need to make sure the cul-de-sac can handle the radius for the fire trucks.
Okay.
So therefore, these would be gated, would mean private road, and I think by now we've implemented that even private roads have to be built at town standard. And do we inspect those?
Yes.
Okay, during construction?
Yes.
Okay. And then, Steve, I noticed the inclusion, thank you, of the model home language here. If 2 or more are built, probably essentially at the same time, if 2 are open for business at the same time. At least 1 would be 2,400 square feet or larger. That 2,400 square feet, given the portfolio of what is being considered if you go into a sales office, would that be, what percentile or quartile would that fall within?
For the record, I'm Steve Harden, the attorney representing the Mill Ridge Farms PUD text amendment. I want to thank Adam and the rest of his staff for all their work on this. I was prepared for that question, knowing that you asked that question at first reading. The reason that we added that was because you asked us to look at that issue. John McKenzie is the proposed builder. I was very excited to be in this part of the Southeast Fishers, Geist area, and so they plan to have 4 different floor plans, which have a variety of elevations, but 4 floor plans for the 70-plus different lots. They range, currently the minimum square footage is 1,900 square feet. So we've got 1 floor plan is around a little bit over 1,900. 1 is a little between 2,200 and 2,300. 1 is 2,327, and then the largest is 2,437.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mike?
Yeah, I just have a question. I think, as you recall, when I was on the meeting in the Plan Commission, I was a little concerned about the detail that one of the Plan Commissioners had on the amenities that were in the common areas. So I saw the slide that said there would be a gazebo and a fire. Is that language in the ordinance itself?
Yes, Mr. Colby, it is in the language. It gives the flexibility for any one of those items.
Well, I have a suggestion for a little more flexibility if the petitioners agreed. Maybe a statement that, and any other amenity as approved by the majority of the homeowners association. Because I just see problems when you start saying, well, we got to have a fire pit in there, you got to have a gazebo in there, and then the community gets in there and they want something else. So, Steve, you want to address that?
Thank you for that comment, Mike. And I don't know if this will pop up at the back. Right before you turn your packet to page tab 6, you'll see the actual language. This is in the ordinance. So we did take that to part 2 about. So what it provides is that The second sentence provides, at a minimum, the following shall be included within the common area marked by an asterisk on the concept plan: seating, pergola, gazebo, fire pit, or similar focal feature. So that Romanet 2 provides some specific examples or a similar focal feature, because we talked about that with the builder and the developer exactly, that wanted some flexibility that the homeowners may decide at some point what they would like, and we have the ability to come back and coordinate that with the town.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I think that does give you the flexibility. I thought it was too restrictive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any public comment? If there is none, I'll
Make a motion to suspend the rules and approve on second reading ordinance 010614A.
Motion by Stewart, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposing? Ayes have it. Moving on to item 9, request to approve an ordinance vacating right-of-way on 104th Street, just east of Willow Road. First, second, third reading, and public hearing.
Good evening, Jeff Hill with the Engineering Department. Before you, requesting consideration of the ordinance about the right-of-way on 104th Street. For your consideration is old apparent right-of-way of 104th Street, just east of Oleo Road. This right-of-way exists back from before the Hamilton County Highway Department realigned 104th Street in about 2008 or 2009, one of the first phases of the Oleo Road improvements in this area. After the time that the road was relocated, the access was reconfigured to the existing strip center along Oleo Road, and now the parcel labeled Mariana Bank on the exhibit here in front of you, they're requesting this right-of-way vacation to facilitate some of the development of the site. As you guys are well aware, building setbacks and so forth with regards to the development of the site are commonly spelled out from the right-of-way line and or property line. This right-of-way vacation helps facilitate that and provides a little bit more buffer and space to develop the site. The petitioner who is here this evening, they have completed the statutory requirements for vacation of right-of-way, i.e. they've provide public notice with regards to the meeting tonight. They've contacted the adjoining property owners and have prepared the proper petitions and legal descriptions. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, but respectfully request consideration of this. Also to suspend the rules, hold first, second, third reading, and the public hearing if you're so inclined.
Any questions for Jeff?
Quick question, Jeff. We weren't given much what was going to go on beyond that, but is the exit way and entrance way off of 104th Street going to be maintained, or is that going to go away, or do we know?
Sure. The access, the way you see it today, where the driveway sits underneath some of the pink shading where the right-of-way would be vacated, would be maintained. This would be an access point, that's there today. It would remain in perpetuity. One thing that we're still working on is finalization of an easement. So if you're so inclined to consider the right-of-way vacation, it would be an approval contingent upon receiving the easement documentation that maintains the ability for the access as well as the couple of utilities that are there today to remain in place.
Okay.
Jeff, the new 104th Street, that's the county right-of-way? So the drive that is east of Oleo, that would all be maintained by them? Kind of following up on Pete's question, the location of it? Really can't move without their authority?
Right. The drive would actually be maintained by the property owners that are there as it accesses the site. You bring up a good point, David. The 104th Street work and the Oleo work was completed by the Highway Department. We did coordinate with them with regards to this right-of-way vacation. They're willing and accepting of the right-of-way vacation. It wouldn't be their maintenance jurisdiction. It wouldn't be ours as well.
You mentioned the utility easements. Are there actually utilities in those easements, or are they just easements? And I mention that because if to optimally develop the site, if those easements need to be relocated, if there's not something in the ground, or with utility relocation.
I can speak to exactly which utilities are in place. Can you guys address that? I think there are some there, and I think there's communications that desires to be there.
Happens to be really two good outlots, so
right.
But
Right.
For the record, Greg Ilko, Crossroad Engineers, 3417 Sherman Drive, Beech Grove, Indiana, representing the Mariana Bank. As far as the easements, actually south of the section line, there are 3 main utilities that exist, 2 of which are already in easements. So the water line and the gas line, we were provided easement documentation for that. We are working with the electric company right now. There's overhead power poles that we're going to be encapsulating in a new easement, in addition to the access easement that Jeff mentioned for the maintenance and the upkeep of the existing drive as it comes off the realigned 104th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? At this time, we'll open up for a public hearing. Anybody which, please come up to the podium, state your name for the record, please. Doesn't look like anybody's coming up. At this point, we'll close the public hearing. Please note for the record that no one stepped forward to the podium to state their name. If there are questions, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and pass on first reading.
So moved.
Motion by Stewart, second by David. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 10, request to adopt ordinance pledging county option income tax revenues to payments owed by Fishers Redevelopment Commission under the lease by and between the Fishers Town Hall.
Good evening. This ordinance addresses one of the projects that Tom talked about in his presentation earlier this evening, and it is part of the implementation of the economic development agreement between the town and Meyer Najum. As you recall, under that agreement, the town has agreed to provide $1.4 million towards the project, which would include construction of the parking lot that would be to the south side of the new building that is going to be built by Meyer Najum, and then also contribute to part of the cost of construction. In order to finance that $1.4 million, the Building Corporation and the Redevelopment Commission would enter into a lease under which the Building Corporation would lease to the Redevelopment Commission the parking lot and part of the adjoining road improvements, and the town would pledge to the repayment of that lease its COIT revenues, and that way a bond could be issued secured by these lease rentals and in turn secured by the COIT revenues that could finance the $1.4 million. The Building Corporation and the Redevelopment Commission have already approved the lease, and now the lease is before the council for approval, and included in that approval is a pledge of the COIT revenues to the payment of the lease rentals under there. The COIT revenues would only be used to the extent that there was insufficient TIF generated by the project, and it's estimated that the TIF would be roughly 2/3 or 70% of the debt service. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rick?
We would ask that it be approved on all 3 readings
Okay.
tonight.
Thank you, Rick. Any public comment? At this point, I entertain a motion to suspend the rules and pass on first reading.
Make a motion to suspend the rules and approve ordinance 020314A. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Second.
Motion by Pete, second by David. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thank you, Rick. Item 11, ordinance 0314B, request to adopt ordinance and hold public hearing to vacate certain right-of-way within the town of Fishers as depicted on the attached Exhibit A. Welcome back, Tom.
Good evening, Mr. President. For the record, Tom Dickey with the Community Development Department. I want to start by showing you a map that's actually attached to your item on your agenda is number 17, but I think it'll help tell the story the best. This also relates to the Meyer Najum transaction. These 2 parcels that you see here, parcel 1 is the parcel that will be the building Meyer Najum's headquarters will be located on. It will be transferred to Meyer Najum. Parcel number 2 is the parcel that will be ultimately transferred to the Town Hall Building Corporation. It will be owned by the Town Hall Building Corporation on which the parking lot sits. So that's item 17. We'll be doing that later, but it helps explain what's happening here with item 11. There are this area of the town was platted many, many years ago and has on it rights of way for actually one road that was never there and part of Maple Street, and that is shown here. So there are 3 areas that are covered by this request that are rights of way today on one of the plats, going all the way back to when Fishers was first platted. So the area in white would be vacated. That's actually a road right of way, and then just I guess the designers and whoever platted this back then decided it was not going to be good for anything else, so they went ahead and platted it as right of way. The area in yellow is platted as right of way, and it needs to be vacated. And then the area in red, which is an alley, which will now be in the center of the parking lot, which you saw in Lot 2 just a minute ago, needs to be vacated as well. So this is a process to begin to get to the title clear, so that in item 17, then we can transfer that property to the Town Hall Building Corporation. So I would request that the ordinance be considered on first, second, and third reading and adopted tonight after a public hearing.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom?
Make a motion to suspend rules and approve on first reading 020314B.
We have a public hearing.
Oh, I forgot about public hearing. Sorry, my bad.
At this time, we'll open up for a public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak, please come to the podium and state your name for the record. Since no one's come forward, we will close the public hearing. Please note for the
Now
record.
so moved as I.
I have a motion by Pete, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item 12 on our agenda, request to amend the salary ordinance for 2014. First, second, and third reading.
Good evening. For the record, CC Hendricks with Human Resources. For you this evening is a request to amend the salary ordinance to add an additional job title for the IT department. This job was budgeted for in the 2014 budget. We just didn't have a title at the time that we did the salary ordinance last year.
Any questions for Cece?
Which one was it, Cece?
It's the business analyst position for business analyst for IT.
For IT.
Okay.
I need any public comment for this, but I'll offer it anyway if anybody has any public comment on this. If there are any questions, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and pass on first reading.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you, CC. Skipping down to item 16. Request to approve resolution accepting transfer of the WIPO property from the Fishers Redevelopment Commission.
For the record, Tom Dickey with the Community Development Department. This also relates to the Meyer Najum transaction. The properties shown in areas 1 and 2 on the slide in front of you were all acquired, as you know, over the last 18 months by the town. All of those were funded, as you know, with RDC funds. The actual way the title was worded on all of these was the title is held in the town and not the RDC, except for one of these. And we need to get that one, which is held by the RDC, into the town's hands with this item, so that in the next item, the town then could transfer all the areas in 1 and 2 to the Town Hall Building Corporation. So this particular request is to accept the dedication of this property from the Redevelopment Commission to the town, and this is a resolution. We would request that it be approved tonight.
Okay. Any questions for Tom?
Motion to adopt resolution R020314C.
Second.
Motion by Stewart, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item 17.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item 17, which is our ultimate goal, which is to get the land in areas 1 and 2 shown on the overhead into transferred from the town, which to the Town Hall Building Corporation, and this resolution does that. I need to just let the record reflect that the exhibit that's attached to the resolution in your packet is not correct. It had too much property in Area 2. It included a neighboring landowner's property. And so I've got the correct aerial on the overhead, and I'll give that to Gay and make sure that's reflected in the record that that is being replaced for this resolution being considered tonight. And we would request that it be approved this evening. Thank you.
While the aerials are good, usually does a legal description go with it then?
It does, yeah, absolutely.
And is that correct?
Yeah, actually not. The legal has not yet been prepared, is my understanding. I don't know if Nicole's been involved, but Jennifer's doing it. But it certainly will be before the transfer is made illegal. We'll make sure that's correct.
Okay.
Motion to adopt resolution R020314D.
Second.
Motion by Stewart, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes
Thank
have
you.
it. Thank you, Tom. Moving on to item 19, request to approve agreement for park impact fee credit, Saxony Beach on lake easement and maintenance and operation of Saxony Beach.
Ooh, head rush as I stood up. Good evening, council. For the record, Tony Elliott, Parks and Recreation Department. Need to work out more or something. I apologize. Before the council this evening is a request to approve an agreement for Saxony Lake and Beach. This agreement really has three major components of it: an easement for Saxony Lake and Beach, an impact fee agreement, and thirdly, is the operations and maintenance agreement for the beach. In general, I put up a rendering here of Saxony Hall, the lake and beach area. What I'll run through first is the impact fee agreement portion of this request before you. All right, so in summary, the estimate for the Saxony Hall that would be constructed is about $1.1 million. The idea as a concept is that the town of Fishers would contribute approximately half of that in a cash outlay up front with park impact dollars. Interstate Holdings, Saxony, in other words, would contribute the other half, approximately $536,000. That amount the town would credit in terms of park impact fee credit. The additional $50,000 that you see on there is a park impact fee credit for the real estate where Saxony Hall would sit. The total estimate with the land, as you see in the bottom, is about $1.16 million, which is the impact fee agreement portion. The operations and maintenance, let me adjust this here at the top. Operations and maintenance for the town would consist generally of these following components. Obviously insurance, contractual services for lifeguards at the beach, intern staffing the beach house to check patrons at the beach in, take user data and liability waivers for people using the beach, general aquatic testing, and addition of sand or moving sand around essentially to keep the beach intact, any sand that might migrate down into the water. So in general, in terms of operations and maintenance with staffing, we're looking at approximately between $55,000 and $60,000 per year. The third major component of this request before you tonight is the easement, which would contain both Saxony Lake and Beach, which would basically allow the town to set the parameter for, or the perimeter rather, that the town would do operations and maintenance within that easement. That's it overall. We would ask that. I guess I'll just open it up for any questions at this point. Thank you.
Any questions for Tony?
As some of you who attended the work session heard, I have a number of reservations about the beach portion of this agreement. I appreciate Saxony offering to help with the community building. I think that's a much-needed asset in that area, but I'm just a little skeptical about taking on the beach and the operation and maintenance. And looking at the utilization figures, I see about 40% of the utilization currently is for residents outside the town of Fishers. And so I have some problems with that. So I'll be voting no on this.
I guess I have similar concerns that Mike has raised. I agree with all his points that he's mentioned in the past. I would look at this as an experiment. I would like us to explore also charging for non-Fishers residents, or maybe it's non-county residents, as some appropriate charge to offset some of the costs. I see this as an experiment, that we can try for several years. And understand. So good tracking as usual, Scott, and as to how we track expenses and the benefits, sort of cross rewards for the community. So I'll be supportive, but I see this as an opportunity to explore a new service delivery, not only the building and the beach, but, I think all the points that Mike raised are cautionary and need to be taken into review.
Thank you, Stuart. Do I have a motion?
Which agreement, I think there was some edits you mentioned today, so is the proper form in Gay's hands?
Yes, the proper form is in Gay's hands, yes.
I'm going to make a motion to approve. I lost connectivity, so I don't see the number. There's a number attached to it, so.
The,
Just a request to approve the
it's
agreement.
item 19, but it's an impact fee credit agreement between Republic and the town of Fishers. So there's no resolution.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Pete. Do I have
I second Pete's Park Impact Fee Credit Agreement, Saxony Beach and Lake Easement Agreement, and Maintenance and Operation of Saxony Beach Agreement.
Thank you.
And if I could make a friendly amendment to that, that if in the future, like I mentioned in the work session, that we find that the pond needs additional maintenance or an additional maintenance cycle, that the operations and maintenance manual, which I believe is already existing, would be reviewed, and the developer understands that, would work with us to change that maintenance cycle so that it would work for this intended use.
Okay.
So I have a motion, a second, and an amendment.
And friendly amendment?
A friendly amendment.
I think maybe to that end, it may be a letter from Republic, Sean, attesting to the points that Dave said we can put in the file. So it's more an affirmative position by the Republic that says they understand those points and in consultation would revise the operating manual. So more of an affirmative from you.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second with the friendly amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Let's have it. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is item 20, request authorization to engage enterprise asset management software project.
For the record, Scott Fadden is town manager, filling in for Tracy Gaynor, who has the flu tonight. This is part of an overarching goal of our organization to automate and modernize to the greatest extent possible. To date, we have never had an enterprise-wide software, so a software that crosses or transcends the boundaries of different departments where we can share information. This project was in the fiscal year 2014 budget, and this is the implementation of it. It is roughly $426,000. This would include the fleet department, the IT department, all components of public works, so building maintenance, street maintenance, wastewater, all of those different divisions within public works. And this would provide us a work order system, an asset tracking system, and our ability to monitor and analyze financial inputs and outputs for each one of these departments. So tonight our request really is for the council to approve a not to exceed number of $426,000. Some of the logistics of this particular purchase would require the town manager to sign more than one purchase order, more than one contract, but it would be a not to exceed total of $426,000.
Any questions for Scott?
426 or 464? 230.
Yeah, we got budgeted 464.
464, I'm sorry, you're right, Stuart, 464,000.
Just saving you coming back.
Well, I'm all for that.
Any questions? I have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Stewart, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any unfinished or new business?
Just one quick item. This last agreement kind of reminded me of something. How are we doing on getting some scheduling software for the athletic fields? I know we've talked about that for...
Yeah. It's a great question. Tracy Gaynor has really taken the lead on that, and he's not here tonight, but I do know that he's made some significant progress with sports in the schools. I think they've selected a vendor and are currently in the process of implementation.
So when do you think that'll be rolled out?
I would hope for fall of this year. I would hope the sports are scheduling everything on that. But they have made significant progress to date.
And seen some of it was mentioned earlier in Tom's review of all the number of efforts that are going on in the town to update and enhance the downtown. But one of the points will not only contribute to the downtown, but in a wider corridors, is the real-time signal.
Yes.
When would be an appropriate time? Because we've seen construction efforts of
Right.
those signal points. When would be a good time to get an update?
Well, I can say we hope to have 116th Street automated by the end of May, Jeff?
We're actually hoping for sometime in April, and if we hadn't had the winter we've had, it probably would have been sooner. 116th Street will be deployed first, be brought online, tested, calibrated, and minor tweaks we'll make while we're doing some of the installation on Allisonville Road, and then 96th Street will come online third.
So maybe in May or June, we could hear how we'd get a performance on 116th?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what's the two terminal points?
On 116th?
Yeah.
Allisonville and Brook School Road.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, one more thing while we're on the discussion of traffic. I recall when the 96 in Allisonville, Michigan turn was being considered and now is in place, there was going to be some feedback as to how successful that is, and any numbers that show waiting times and how that's impacted. And I also asked a couple council meetings ago about looking at the lane and the signage on northbound Allisonville. I still see a number of cars pulling over the last minute, and I know that's a challenge, but if you could be maybe the next meeting, not necessarily tonight, give us some kind of a update on that.
I will tell you, to your first point, we had A&F do a study to demonstrate traffic flows that are currently down there and the level of service they're getting in comparison to prior to construction. We have that report, and we'll share that with the council, and certainly share that with the public as well. You'll see a significant improvement in traffic flow in all directions regarding that.
Very well said. The report we've got, it summarizes improved levels of service, reduced overall travel times through that intersection area. And Mike, with regards to the other comment about the northbound Allisonville lane configuration, we continue to look at that, and we hear about it from not just you. You're not the only one, trust me. But I think what we'd like to do is a solution that may involve not only some signage but also pavement markings, which are somewhat prohibitive this time of year. So I think as soon as we see better weather in the spring, we'll be looking at whether changes are appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
John, I had two quick things real quick. One, Tim Gropp, I forgot to thank you. I know that these three guys that I thank do a lot for redevelopment, and you do a lot for retention, and that's just as helpful in the downtown, so I apologize for that. And then also, Scott, one thing I was noticing was Edward Rose is starting to come up with their buildings over on 106th Street.
Cross Point, you mean?
Yeah. And those are pretty close, and they're pretty high. And I saw the same thing for Watermark, and some of those were probably approved in the past or with another PUD. So just holistically, could you just kind of look at planning, building, and things like that? And there are other setbacks when you get buildings a little bit higher that we should do. It'll happen over time as projects come in, but maybe that's something that we should look at.
Absolutely.
Which ones, Dave? Sorry.
Edward Rose, they've been zoned for a long time, but they're actually coming up, and it's across from 106th and
Cross Point.
yeah.
East of the railroad track, 106.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that at the Watermark, and nothing's bad. I mean, it was just what was designed at the time, but if we can,
Yep. I understand.
if it needs to be more.
The apartments that are up right now, which I think are 3-story,
Yep.
right along, which would be Lantern Road. I think they're pretty close to the road, so we'll definitely have our planning department take a look at that.
Road and then also just in between the buildings. So it's something
understood.
we need to look at.
Thank you. Any public comment from the audience? Sorry, we'll reiterate what a great job our team's done. We got a lot of work accomplished, got a lot of things going on in our community, and our whole team's performing extremely well, so my compliments to everybody. So are there any claims that need to be pulled? Do I have a motion to adjourn with the accounts payable register?
So,
motion by Pete, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by David. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Have a great week.